Hello there, flesh humans, and today we're gonna figure out which one is the best T10 heavy autoloader. There's 4 of them. Well, one of them is an auto reloader, but that counts as well. So let's now go into it. Which one's the best one? I made a community poll a couple of days ago where 40% said that the Kranvagn is actually the best one. So I'm not really sure about that. However, I'd say let's have a look. There's pretty much 2 answers to this question. There's a long one and there's a short one. So I'd say let's do the long one first, and let's look at the stats. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, obviously, we have to put in the M6 Yo twice here because it has 2 different guns. Now, which one? Obviously, that's the first question. Which of those guns is the better one? Now, obviously, the DPM of the Batshak gun basically is substantially higher. Same with the aim time, which means I would definitely recommend using the 3-shot gun over the 2-shot gun, because obviously a 21% DPM increase is quite a lot, and it's definitely substantial. That puts it from almost the worst DPM to the highest DPM here. So definitely I think the 3-shot gun on the Yo is better, especially because the tank also has very strong armor. Now the 57 Heavy and the 50B pretty much have identical guns. The only difference is the intra-clip reload, with 3 seconds on the 50B and 2.5 seconds on the T57 Heavy, which leads to the 57 Heavy having a slightly higher fire rate, but in everything else, the guns are basically identical. The aim time and the dispersion is slightly better on the 50B, same with the gun depression, and the mobility as well is stronger on the MX50B compared to the 57 Heavy. However, obviously the Yo's armor is where that one shines, and that way the 50B lags behind quite a lot. Now, while the 50B has the mobility and the gun advantage, it does lose pretty much on the armor mostly. Now, about the Kranvagn, it has the worst DPM. It has decent accuracy. I mean, it is worse than the good guns. It is slightly better than the big gun on the M6 Yo. The mobility is also the worst in this comparison, and the armor, besides the front of the turret, isn't really that strong either. Now, what is it about the Kranvagn? And to find all that out, we're going to have to look at the armor of these vehicles, because obviously the gun and the mobility is only one part. Now, obviously, lower plate is always a weak spot. Upper plate, 300mm, which means it is impenetrable for T10 standard rounds, which is very nice. If you use the gun depression, this plate is going to become fully impenetrable, so that is very good as well. The side is 65mm, which is very American. It is not shaped like an M48 pattern hull, for example, where it's curved inwards, so the side on this vehicle is relatively weak. However, as you can see, 65mm is enough to have a very aggressive side scraping angle like this. Obviously, the second you start to over angle like this, you're going to get penned, but a 80-85 degree angle can work here. The biggest problem with this vehicle is the cupolas on top, because they're only 180mm in thickness on average, so that is the biggest problem. However, the turret basically here is pretty much impenetrable, besides for a couple of tiny spots that are hard to hit. Obviously, the side of the turret is weak. That shouldn't be a surprise, but the main downside of this tank is the cupola, so it is useful to keep this tank moving back and forth, so it's harder to hit the cupolas. And then we go to the T57 Heavy, and the best way this armor can be described as in its plot armor. It works if it wants to. Now, the lower plate is obviously a weak spot again. The cheeks here are also a massive weak spot. These plates up here can also be penned, so basically the turret can be penned relatively easily. It has 8 degrees of gun depression, which is worse than the Yo and the AMX50B, so that's not that great. And the turret can be penned relatively easily all around if you fire the right rounds, and if you fire pin rounds. Obviously, the cupola is pretty strong, but can also be penned on flat ground, but I would not recommend aiming for the cupola because the turret cheeks are quite weak. Now, the front plate is very strong. They are very angled, so it's a very bad idea to shoot here. You have to try to shoot this small bottom plate, so that is where the 57 has an advantage. But obviously, the turret armor is not there. However, what this thing does have is has the angle that I've talked about with the M6 Yo and also the M48 pattern. The armor is angled inwards, which makes the side armor more effective. However, it's thinner than the Yo, so in the end, we're going to end up at the same. A very extreme angle and side scraping can work, but everything else is going to lead you to instant penetration. And the rear, as on pretty much all American tanks, is very weak. It can be HE'd quite easy well. And then we go to the MX-50B, and it doesn't have any armor really on the sides and the rear. This is completely paper. Forget any idea of side scraping. It's 30 millimeters. You're going to get overmatched. You also have these plates here, which are very thin and can be penned in every angle in every situation. So in terms of the armor, the 50B is definitely the weakest one out of the 4. You also have this lower plate here. However, what the 50B has, it has ramming, because this plate is very thick and very well angled. You know, it's very small at the front. So this tank is very, very good at ramming because it has a lot of speed, has a lot of weight, has a great armor angle for it. So this is pretty much the best ramming tank in the game. The turret, it can, again, get some miracle bounces here and there like the 57. But in general, the turret is relatively weak. And it's also bigger, so it is quite easy to pen. So in terms of armor, you don't have much. And that is where the Kranvagn comes in, as in the turret is very thick and pretty much almost impenetrable if you use this tank hull down. You still have cupolas on top, but they're very tiny and they're very hard to hit. Now the upper plate is basically just paper most of the time, unless it's directly frontally angled at you, which is obviously how a pike nose works, like an IS-7 as well. You have to directly angle it at the enemy, then it is the most effective. As soon as you turn, the effectiveness is basically gone. And the lower plate is quite a lot bigger than that on a 57 Heavy or a 50B, so that is quite a weak spot there. Side is 80 millimeters, so that is not too bad there either. Now, the Kranvagn is all about the armor and only about the armor in this situation. So now we got into the first one, that is the M6 and it is Himmelsdorf, which is not good at all. And now, obviously what we're going to do is we'll go to the medium side here. Obviously, the York could also work on the other one because of the very good turret armor, so you can play it there as well. Now, obviously, what you want to do as a team is you want to take the map control, because that is everything, pretty much. So, 50% map control, 50% team. And now let's try to take that. Now, the advantages of the Yo are that it has a more versatile gun. You know, it can be used more universally because you don't have that much downtime on your autoloader. However, obviously the downside that comes with that is that the clip potential is only 900 instead of 1200 of others. And obviously something like a AFV 4005 does have a lot more clip damage there. I'm obviously not going to cover the 4005 because, I mean, it's a tank destroyer. But in general, the 4005 is a very capable tank, but only in very, very capable hands. And speaking of that, what is about the tech tree? Because those are important, right? Tech trees are important. Which one has the best tech tree? And that is the Yaw as well, because on the other three, the T9s are all very horrible. Whereas the T9 on this one might even be better T for T than on the others. Now, obviously, that's not everything. Another upside of this vehicle is the very strong armor. You have the two cupolas on top. However, those can be hidden quite easily by simply wiggling the tank back and forth properly, and then you can avoid getting shot at them. Obviously not completely, but you can make them a lot harder to hit. And while you do have 10 degrees of gun depression, it can work well in flat ground as well. However, ideally, if you're on a better map, then surely you want to take a hold down position and actually play it in a way where it is the most effective. And 3.4k damage so far. That is not too bad. And now it's only the 60 TP left. And in terms of the mobility, it's essentially the same as the 57 Heavy. It's not great, it's not bad. It is simply there, and it's, I think, good enough, just about. And now the 60 TP has 600 alpha damage. Do I take the gamble and go for it? Well, I'll try. Because obviously, as long as you have one hit point, it doesn't matter how many hit points you have. In the end, I guess, in a situation like this, obviously, if you're losing, then you want to conserve your hit points. If you're winning, I mean, you can just kind of be a bit more loose with them. But not too loose, because that might then end up in you losing. Okay, there we go. That is the clip done, and that is the yaw. That is 4,500 damage in a game like this. So this is a very strong tank and has very good advantages. And now let's get rid of a bit of armor and add some power. because the T57 Heavy pretty much has the same mobility as the yaw, but it has a lot more clip damage, 300. That is basically adding another shell to the yaw, but you have 3 shells, so you add more damage with the same clip potential, which is obviously very good, but you do get rid of quite a bit of the armor that the yaw has, on the turret especially. So you don't really want to be going hull down with this tank, because you can't. You're going to get penned in the turret in most of the time. Obviously, you can get some bounces off this plate up here, which is angled backwards, so it can be very effective. Now, what is this tank about? Well, it's not really that fast. It's, as I said, the same mobility as the yaw, which isn't great. Not a lot of armor and not a lot of mobility most of the time isn't really great. So this tank works best in a second line situation, because obviously if you go in guns blazing right at the front, you are going to struggle, because obviously you have almost 20-second reload on your gun, which means that you're also going to be vulnerable for quite a long time after you've finished clipping, like this. And then a FV4202, for example, behind you can cause damage while you're running away and reloading. And now obviously that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get out, I'm going to disappear, I'm going to reload, and then there's an object. And now we're going to go forward and trying to go for the MX50B, which is going to be the next one in the list. Now, is the T57 Heavy stronger than the yaw? No, it is not. Better than the yaw. It is not stronger than the yaw. However, it is used differently. While the yaw is more aggressive, this one is slightly more passive, as in you can't push as much with this one as you can with the yaw, because obviously you don't have the armor and you have a longer reload, which means you have to play it more safe. Otherwise, you can get circled, pushed, and killed easier than in the yaw. So basically, they're the same in terms of how good they are, but they are used in different situations. Then, oh, try to take him out. Nope, it's not going to happen. Now the 268 is going to be left over there, and the IS-4 is over there on that side, platooned with the 268. He's not helping him. If you're playing a platoon, help your teammate. You know, help him out, and obviously don't end up going to the wrong side of the map, and that leads you to your ultimate demise, because that's obviously not great. And now, as you can see, mobility roughly the same as the yaw, if not tiny bit better, but all in all, it doesn't really make a difference at all. And you do have also very nice accuracy, so you can do stuff like that, which is beautiful. Now, 2000 damage, and the IS-4 is, instead of what you should do in a situation like this, you know, play from the back, try to get distance. If you're in a 1vx situation, you want to get distance. He's just YOLOing in and dying. But then again, 2800 damage, as you can see. Don't go to the absolute front line. Play it a bit further back than you would with a yaw, and this tank works just as well. So now what we previously did is we did trade armor for clip potential. Now what we're going to do is we're going to trade even more armor for mobility, and that is the AMX50B. Now obviously this tank is only for good players, because it is quite hard to play. However, I would argue that this tank actually can perform a lot better than a T57 Heavy, and to some instances also the yaw, because it is massively more mobile and it is more versatile. You can move the gun around a lot more, and you can position the gun where it is the most effective. And that is obviously very important for an autoloader, you know, because you don't want to get stuck in a position where your tank's not useful. So that will be quite bad, and that's what this thing has. It has very, very good mobility. I mean, it even does have some armor on the front plate, and also the turret, the mantlet especially, here. And also the front plate is very well armored, which also leads this tank to be great at ramming. So, if you happen to be interested in maybe ramming a 200 LT or something like that on the enemy team, then you can do that with ease, because this tank is very, very good at that. So let's actually try to go for it. I hope he's not defended. I hope he's not going to run, but he's definitely going to run. But it would have been very nice if I could have rammed him. And now HE, and he is gone. Wonderful. But as you can see, I can move this tank around a lot better than the other two, which leads me to be able to fight on more sides and more positions, which makes it more effective. However, obviously, the lack of armor does require a better skilled player. So that is the downside. Basically, on a baseline, it's not that great as the other two. However, if you're a good player, this one can do better for you, basically. Can, not will. That's always the important part. And obviously, because with the 57 Heavy, I wouldn't be able to move around as fast. And now we're down to 3. Well, they have 4. But obviously, the Progetto and the IS, and also the Kennedy one are relatively low. So, that's not too bad. And the 121 is also full HP. And I am also full HP, which is very, very good. I need 2 shots on each the Progetto and the IS-7. I have 3 available with 1,200 damage, which means it should be definitely enough to just take them out. Okay, now, I hope I didn't get spotted there. I did get spotted, that's not good. But, oh, Camper LT is dead. Beautiful. And now my goal will be to take the IS-7 in 2 shots without the Progetto clipping me in the meantime. Or not. I have to go for the track wheel here, because that's the weak spot at this point. And pin it right through. And the Progetto is nowhere to be seen. That is beautiful. Which makes me assume that he's in the back, or he has moved around over here. Oh, never mind. He's all the way over there, just... or he just went there. Alright, that's it. That's the 50B. As you can see, moves a lot better, has a lot better mobility, and has more potential for a good player. Now, previously we changed armor for mobility, and we exchanged armor for a better gun. Now we exchange better gun and mobility for some armor. So we arrive at the Kranvagn. What makes the Kranvagn special in this case as well is the auto reloader. And what makes it not special is that the mobility and DPM are absolutely crap. Now, what this tank is good at is positional combat. It's the pretty much exact opposite of the 50B, but the 50B is a very mobile tank. It's a very widely usable tank that moves around quickly and repositions itself to take advantage of situations and what's happening. This thing can't do that. It is slow, and it only has 2,000 DPM, which means you have to play this thing positional. Put it in one spot, and then it stays in that spot until that spot is no longer useful. And also, the traverse speed on this tank is absolute garbage, which is obviously not very good if a light or medium tank would try to flank you or stuff like that. Okay, now he's going to try to run, which is good. What you want to have is, again, map control, and you have to play this thing in a team as well, because you just have such abysmal DPM that you can't fight anyone on your own. Like, for example, that Yor, the Yor's going to easily win a fight like this, because he has a lot more DPM and he has a better gun by a lot. The only thing I have is turret armor, and that's pretty much the only outstanding thing this vehicle has. It is turret armor, and more turret armor. And in every situation where you can't sit in one position and use that turret armor to slowly grind down your enemy, this tank is absolutely garbage. But in a lot of cases, and sometimes, you can do that. You can sit in a position and grind down the enemy slowly and painfully. And in that situation, there is no better tank than the Kranvagn to do that. It's just sad that otherwise it is relatively useless, which is sad. But then again, the auto reloader also allows you a bit of more tactical variety around that, so that can be an advantage, but doesn't have to be, because overall the stats on this thing are very, very significantly worse. But obviously, because it has the turret armor, it is excellent at playing hull down, and that is what it's good for. But I can't recommend this tank whatsoever, and because obviously the ML2 is already absolutely garbage. The ML1 is a great tank, by the way. The ML1 is a great tank. However, this thing is slow, doesn't have a good gun, and overall, the turret armor isn't enough to save this tank. So, basically, that was the long answer. Now we get to the short answer. Get the Yor first, because it's the best well-rounded one. Then get the 57 Heavy, because it's the best damage dealer. You get the 50B, because it is the best mobile, versatile tank. And then get the Kranvagn if you hate mobile combat. basically. If you want to camp in one spot, if you want to hold down and just sit there, then get the Kranvagn. Overall, I think the best one is probably shared between the 50B and the yaw, whichever one's the best. However, obviously the 50B is significantly harder to play than the other two here. And with that said, that is it for this video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Goodbye.